Welcome to another Baka commentary. In this video will be my analysis / impression of the current state of Intel as of Q1 of 2024. Intel became the giant as we currently know. It all started with the Intel 3rd generation. The previous attempt that they did before 3rd generation, they were niche, they had its purpose, but they weren't a massive, giant, and mainstream map volume monster that Intel 3rd generation made them to be. Some of the failures before 3rd generation were designs like the Intel Titanium cores, where they've made their own standard, and if you tried using those cores outside those Titanium instruction set, it just completely was not compatible and just basically shat the bed. What was their peak of Intel empire? I consider it Intel 6th generation, and ever since Intel 11th generation, that when they really started to sliding down. The generation that after 11th gen, it really shows how Intel has permanently lost the crown and can never go back to its peak, and resulting in them just doing salvage mode and just trying to salvage what's left, taking grip of the piece of the market share. What I think started this downfall was them just stagnating and no innovation. That's what got them the crown in the first place. They went, okay, we're going to build on top of what's existing, and we're going to give you innovation. Which third, fourth, fifth, sixth was kind of, yeah, it's good. But as after 6th generation to 11th generation, Intel was like, we're going to launch the same stuff. Launch, just slightly faster. Very, very small margin, and be like, well, it's eventually be like, it's great for profit, but it's not good when you have competitor, which their competitor just went, yeah, we caught up to you now thanks to your slow update and progress. We're now just going to go zoom past you now, which their competitor inevitably did. And then, in order for Intel to counter their competitors, they have then finally innovated a new P and E core system. How why? Because, well, a lot of CPU reviewers started to using applications that utilize a lot of multi-core and thread. And guess what? If having like 4 E-core for the space of 1 P-core, and that 4 E-core is going to get you more score than that 1 P-core on some theoretical benchmark or in some real bench project, be like, yeah, it's better. In those scenarios, yes, having 4 smaller efficiency core like the Intel design P and E core system, it is indeed a great system. But the problem is 12th gen was a Gen 1, 13. It's still build up, and 14th, yeah, it's still the same thing. They built up and kind of, well, they were able to trade blows, and basically the two companies turned into who can have the better benchmark multi-score and who has the highest FPS at fucking 1,000 FPS. Whatever. And then the enthusiast is like, oh, who has the lowest 1% load? This is why again. Whatever, Intel. And as well as a result of this benchmark rate, Intel started to have SKUs and working with motherboard vendors to have specific features for benchmarking. What can be more obvious to the end users? the KS CPU, they were clearly designed first and foremost benchmark kings. They were better binned, better bin cores and memory controllers later down the road, but the first few iteration of the KS chip, the 8700 Special Edition, Intel doesn't want to say it's a KS SKU, but I think that is the first generation KS, and they just called it 8th generation Special Edition. The 9900 KS, that came with, again, better memory IC and pretty much a one-click OC out of box, basically all called boosting, which that was on the motherboard vendors, where basically the i9 900KS basically all core boosted the maximum at like some 5.2 something gigahertz, and for that time was like insane. So like the KS for the i9 KS did make sense. The i9 10900KS and however, yeah, again, they made sense, as clearly Intel, there are still people these days still use Intel 10th generation. What started to make the KS lineup look stupid is the 12900KS, 13900KS, and their most recent KS CPU launched, the i9 4900KS, the 12900K, 13900K. Those, they indeed had higher clock speed, but they were negligible in real life. And all that extra clock speed, what all they're good for, as I polluted them to, they were great benchmark toppers. The better bin memory IC, you had to get specialized boards. So you just couldn't buy any motherboard off the shelf. You had to buy those motherboard which only supports 2 DIMM and high quality, so you couldn't you can't just buy some cheapo 2 DIMM board and be like, I am going to put that memory IC, utilize that higher bin IC. You had to go and buy all those Asus Apex, Gigabyte Tachyon, ASRock Taichi 2 DIMM edition, Quad 2 DIMM edition. You had to buy those CPU to utilize the KS SKU, the 12 and the 13 KSs. However, the 14900 KS became a really, really, really stupid CPU. In order for you to actually really use the 14900 KS's special clock speed, you needed to delid the CPU and direct die cool the CPU, because if you just ran it stock as it is, that clock speed was unsustainable. It was basically impossible to sustain. And a lot of the reviewers and a lot of SIs just ended up, for that having approved, that's why you had the SI approved list of i9 4900 KSs that were pre-delidded out of box in those big beefy 420mm AIOs, or in those open loop cooling, as those were the only way for the system integrators to really, really sustain these KS clock, as the KS was really, really aggressively clocked out of box, and the memory IC, yet again, just like the 12 and 1300 KS, you really, really needed to go buy these 2 DIMM specialized board, overclocking board, to utilize the higher spec DDR memory DIMM. And however, yeah, if you were a DIY and you bought the 4900 KS, you got no warranty when you actually delidded it to direct die cool it, or you had to leave it stock and really hope for it and buy it at best maybe a contact from and void your motherboard warranty and be like YOLO as and hopefully you have big enough cooling to cool that monstrosity i9 4900 KSs. And yeah. So, however, this was complete. Intel has done a kind of a rebrand from that Core i series disaster with now the new Core series and the Core Ultra series. So the old Core Pentium, Atom, i3s, i5s, i7, and i9. In the Intel new naming scheme, they're going to call it Intel Core processor for the Pentium and the Atom stuff. The i3s are going to be called the Core Series 3 generation. Intel Core Series 5 generation. Intel Core 7 generation number. Core 9 generation. What is really new about this naming scheme is the Core Ultra series. What is the difference between this Core and the Core Ultra series? The Core Ultra series, Intel would like to tell you it is for art. It has an artificial intelligence in them. So what is the artificial intelligence that Intel is trying to market you? They are trying to market you the MPU, which is a chiplet, again, a separate die, which is on top of the whatever multi-chip system, and be like, that is an AI system, which is very useful for now, debatable, and if you can use it, cool. If not, from what I can see, it's a hindrance and it actually will lower your CPU core performance as well. There's wasted TDP on this AI bullshit that you don't need. However, yeah, that right now the current state of Intel CPU is basically we are right now in damage control, salvaging mode. We are just trying to salvage what we have left and try to be like keep the current customers happy and be like, okay, the new guy, we can give them a try, but if we can't, don't bother. We're just gonna keep our legacy customers happy, and that's it. Now, on to the next department that Intel is still operating and well known is that Intel graphics department or arc department, whatever. That department kind of again historically has been just a integrated graphics where it's just basically used for display troubleshooting, and what really got their discrete graphics pretty good reputation was the Intel third, fourth generation, where those iGPUs were capable of gaming, not just esport games, but they were able to play AAA titles at that time, low setting, pretty decent frame rate and performance. However, again, the 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11 was kind of a disappointment, and basically it got turned into a meme of you only use the iGPU for troubleshooting. However, with the 9th, 10th gen, Intel again salvaged their iGPU department by inventing the thing called QuickSync, which indeed it wasn't to beat it was beneficial for benchmarking. However, in reality, it did help with a lot of stuff like Adobe rendering, where QuickSync would be additional help the CPU to render videos when CPU rendering was a thing. As soon as GPU rendering was a thing, QuickSync, I think, just died. And however, for the people that do still use like 10900K system as their professional system, you bet they are using QuickSync Teacher. Now, on top of recently when they launched their discrete card with the 12, 13, 14, and the Core Ultra series, they launched Alchemist. The graphics was launched buggy and had a lot of design flaw. Why? Those design flaws, they never fixed it in design, and as a result, the drivers team had to go overtime crunch, fix a lot of bugs, a lot of issues that Intel Alchemist has created, and it has again sank the Intel graphics division. As of current, the Intel discrete graphic is and the iGPU seems to have just absolute terrible reputation. Nobody really wants to use it as it's not a stable, and basically Intel basically has to be like, hey, drivers team, you are gonna have to salvage whatever our iGPU and Alchemist and hopefully Battle Mage is gonna revitalize Intel graphic division. Now onto the less known part of Intel that I am gonna analyze on Intel networking, Intel storage, and Intel FPGA. That I am aware. There may be more departments as Intel is a massive company, and there may be departments that I am not aware of. Intel networking seems to be pretty good reputation as their Wi-Fi card is known as the premium Wi-Fi card to go to for laptops. There, you want gigabit, you want your Ethernet ports on laptops and workstations. Again, Intel is the go-to solution for a lot of them, as they have the reputation that soft drivers is really rock solid and it doesn't drop out and it overall is pretty high quality. Hence, Intel networking seems to be like has a good reputation and able to hold that reputation. The next, however, that we cannot say same about Intel storage, or as we know them as Intel Optane. Optane launched as a really, really good concept, as it was both useful for the consumer and the data center. For consumers, this was a time SSD was still very expensive, so all these like small 10, 20 gigabyte SSD, they were great addition to a hard drive booter. So, like files and maybe OSs, when they were small enough, would be able to be loaded onto move to the SSD so that you could get the SSD performance. At the same time, you are also getting hard drive value, space, capacity. This was very popular among system integrators with the mid to low end laptops where they were like, we're just going to use Optane and a hard drive, as well as for certain systems they had Optane memory replace RAM. Why? When RAM prices gone up, Intel Optane became the new solution for a system integrator to try to cheap out on RAM and just put white load of RAM of Optane memory to replace RAM. Did it kind of work? Yes. If you're running JDEX 2100 33 megahertz, yeah, Optane did indeed do the thing. Optane was indeed really viable for that JDEC. However, as more CPU went higher than that 2133 megahertz and 2400, 3200, 299 megahertz, JDECs, even if they were JDEC RAM, right, Intel Optane was struggling which led into, again, Optane on the consumer side kind of died, which also led the data centers of like, yeah, we have these ancient Skylake servers, and yeah, we'll use them. However, for the Skylake, Coffee Lake, and all the whatever lake, then Intel called the 7, 8, 9, the 8 and 10 gen cores, those data centers be like, we are losing performance to get tons of capacity. So when data center used Optane, they had to be like, do we want tons of Optane of capacity? Which you actually had to buy special version of the Intel data center chip to support Optane, or the increased actual capacity. If not, so this is why I think Intel Optane kind of failed as the data center. Like, it came out a bit late on the consumer side. The market that no longer made sense, and eventually Intel Optane became an obsolete technology, and Intel just had warehouses of them, and basically at best sold them at cost, and at worst sold them at a loss to write it off. Intel FPGA, on the other hand, when I looked into this, it's actually pretty cool. As Intel FPGA, for to give a brief description, what they do, they are there to help design and refine the manufacturing and the design process of, well, products. As FPGA development can simulate products, and they are able to actually help and assist product development, which Intel seems to be able to be like, yeah, FPGA seems to be good, as well as I would not be surprised if Intel FPGA will be available to Intel Foundry customers when Intel eventually opens up their Foundry service to just outside of Intel. But as of right now, Intel FPGA seems to only work with Intel themselves, which leads into the next topic of this video, the Intel what the heck, which leads into the Intel Foundry service. This is Intel's pride and joy segment. This is where basically it is so powerful, it got the most powerful government of the world, the United States government, to write a bill to literally support Intel Foundry, or Intel. Because why? Intel Foundry was basically one of the very, very people that got Mr. Joe Biden to push this CHIP Act, and basically Intel, as a result of this, Intel is and its benefactors were basically funded, or willing to play nice with the United States, were basically funded by the U.S. Treasury to have United States-based manufacturing and foundry. How did Intel become the #1 spot for this CHIP Act thing? Intel is a United States company, ran, everything is United States, with a lot of it is in the USA. This is why Intel is getting all this benefit money, and that their competitors isn't getting as much from this thing. This is also shows the uniqueness of Intel, as Intel is the only company on planet Earth that makes, design, and ship everything in the same company roof name. Most of their competitors do not do this, as why most of their competitor is either a design company, manufacturing company, and there are some companies that are just there for distribution, but most of the tech company is design and manufacturing, which again makes it Intel very unique as they can run Intel Foundry at a loss. As they, like Intel 6th generation, I bet they could run their foundries that manufacturing at a loss because they could compensate that within their product margin and just be like, yeah, we're gonna lose money without making that product, but however, we're gonna have crazy margin selling the product, so that's fine. If you were just a design company, there was no way for you to just sell design stuff that is then going to be going to losing you money. And same thing with manufacturing company. There was no way you're going to manufacture stuff at a loss and just be like for the whole life of the product and just never get anything back. Which is why it did cause the new, if you read the new Intel freaking whatever revenue thing, Intel Foundry lost $7 billion as a result of doing this. Why? Because Intel is Intel. They can afford this. They are, what, these $7 billion? Guess where they can get that money back? That's right, the CHIP Act. As well as they are using some of the money that they made from CPU and data center. They're there to again to put R&D and more machinery in manufacturing, which leads to the issue of Intel Foundry. When Intel Foundry, when they were at their peak, yes, they were really, really ahead of their competitors, and their design, whatever, was really ahead. As one, they only had to design their fab to make their own product. They didn't need to be like the other manufacturer and be open and have to be like, oh, after they were able to do a very, very specific manufacturing, which got them to have egotistic and very unrealistic. Some of the managements, like they saw this and gave Intel Foundry extremely, extremely hard to achieve goals, which led to the downfall, and as a result, this loss of $7 billion as a result of wasting manpower and time of basically they were chasing an insane goal that could not be achieved, as those goals were way too ambitious, and the people in the management were not, well, Intel Foundry guys, and simply Intel Foundry was given a goal that they could never score, which changed when the new CEO Pat Gelsinger came, where they just went, hold up guys, manager, middle manager, lower manager, high manager, stop doing that, you're fucking killing our company, give these guys more, achievable goals and less stupidity, and made more efficient with our Foundry service. And basically, as we can kind of see right now, Intel is able to salvage it, rise from the ashes of what the fall of the dip, and is hopefully Intel Foundry. Intel has promised we will eventually, when it gets to Angstrom, will become open and more. They will allow third party to. They were willing to manufacture product for not just themselves, but rather for third parties like AMD, like ARM, and NVIDIA. But yeah, Intel Foundry, historically, yeah, cool. The recent history, not so great. The future, I think they have a great bright light ahead of them. Overall, I think Intel has built a solid foundation. Thankfully, unfortunately, in the process of building their empire, they have made some missteps, and they has cost them dearly. And thankfully they are able to recover from the misstep and the mistake. But however, Intel cannot make these mistakes again, as I don't see. If we want to keep the current Intel cannot make another Intel 7, 8, 9, 10th generation fuckery again. As if they do this again, they are going to fucking collapse. And in my opinion, the United States is going to be like, okay, you are now collapsing. We are going to buy you out, and we basically, as United States government, is going to change the DNA of Intel, and Intel will be basically a shell company of its former self, like Apple. Basically, Apple is going. They could become the new Apple if Intel keeps, well, doing the 6th to 11th gen bullshittery again. Anyway, guys, that's my analysis, such impression on the current state of Intel. If you like this video, do the typical like and subscribe thing. And if you want to, get more people interested to look at this video, go share the video in whatever community you think fits. And I'll see you guys in the next video.